In this video, I'm going to share what I've learnt using Cubasis 3 here on the iPad in just 24 hours. So let's go. Hi, my name is Pete and welcome to the second video in my Cubasis 3 series where I'm checking out Cubasis here on the iPad for the very first time. If you missed the first episode, that's where I checked it out for the very first time. You can check out that video up the top or in the description. But in this one, we're going to jump in 24 hours later and see what I've learned and what I've still got to learn about this DAW. Now, this video is going to be split up into 5 main sections where I'm covering what I've learned about editing, mixing, recording, file management, and what I'm still learning. And then at the very end, I'm going to let you know my verdict so far after my first day of use. Now, there'll be some timestamps down below if you want to jump around through the different sections. Let's get cracking with the first section. What have I learned about editing here in Cubasis 3? First, and most importantly, I have learnt how to undo and redo, and it was in a very simple location. If you saw the video yesterday, I was struggling, but only because GarageBand has their undo up here. The undo and redo here for Cubasis is just down below. So if I want to do something here, I've done something and I want to undo it, it's a simple case. And the undo and redo engine here in Cubasis is actually super powerful. I've found it really handy when I've been editing. So there you go, undo and redo, super simple in Cubasis. Next up, copy and paste. This is something I use all the time in whatever editing I'm doing. Copy and pasting here in Cubasis is actually pretty simple. You've got your copy and paste up here. We just select our item, we hit copy, we go to the place we want it, and then we hit paste. And it's as simple as that. So moving, copying, and pasting your items around here in Cubasis, even though I was struggling a little yesterday, within 24 hours, I've got it down. The next function I've found myself using quite a lot is the snap to grid function, and it's actually really easy to manage this. In the little section up here, we can tell it how much of a grid we want here. So if we want it to just be to, say, a half note, we can do that, and then when we move things around, it's going to snap it a little bit chunkily like that. If we want it to be more finite, we can bring that down, and now when we move things around, we're right there on the 16th, the 32nd note, whatever you want to do. So I kind of like that because it means when you're making those finite adjustments, you can either turn the grid off or snap it to a particular note. Super handy. Splitting and in fact rejoining or gluing items is actually super simple too. So if we tap on the track here, if we want to split this bass right down the middle, all we need to do is put the playhead at the spot and hit the split button, and it instantly splits those into 2 different sections. We want to rejoin them, well, we can actually just use our select tool here, multi-select the 2, hit the glue button, and they're back together. That just makes your editing so seamless, and I'm really enjoying the functionality of splitting and gluing to keep my tracks in order. We also have a really quick and easy way to mute a section here. So if you've got 2 different media items here, you want to mute one, you can actually mute it right here in the item. So it's nothing to do with the track. You're not muting it over here on the track. You're just muting the item, and it grays out there. So that means if you've got a part of a track that you want to quickly mute, if you don't want to, if you want to try removing it from your mix, you can do that. And then to unmute, you just tap it back and you're good to go. That's just a really handy feature to have when you've split up a track or you split up an item and you want to be able to just mute it to see what it sounds like. Now, I showed this before with the split and the glue, but you can also multi-select. So you might be thinking, how do I select multiple items? Do I tap? Do I hold down? What do I do? Well, there's just a select button up the top here. So we select, and with that selected, any items that we select will all be selected and unselected together. And you also get your lasso items, so you can go around a bunch of stuff and select it all at once. Again, it just makes the editing. The editing, when I first started using this, seemed a little clunky, but after 24 hours, it actually becomes a little bit seamless because you got all these editing tools across the top. Once you're used to what each one of them does, things become so much simpler. Now, there's a heap more about editing that we can do here and a heap more I've still got to learn, but I wanted to show you the main points here. The final one that I'm finding really cool is this, the stretch function. This works really well. Take a look at this track. I've brought in a drum loop here, but it's not on the beat. If we play it right now, that's not cool, yeah. So all we need to do is tap on the item and tap the stretch button, and we've even got this auto stretch. So if we tap on that, well, it's brought it into 2 bars. So this is actually going to be too quick. If we take a listen, it'll be on the beat. Actually, that sounds kind of cool. But what I actually wanted originally was to stretch this out over 4 bars. So we can actually do that. If we tap it, we tap on stretch and we grab the handle, we can just put this exactly where we want it. We want it to be right there on 4 bars. It auto stretches it and gets the audio ready to go. Let's take a listen now. Very cool, yeah. So I'm going to find myself using that option. And I know for my GarageBand user friends, that is something we don't have in GarageBand, especially for items that aren't Apple loops. So this is going to be something that could be super cool to explore. Let's move on to the next section, which is mixing. Now, I showed a little bit about the mixer in the previous video, but I've been exploring it and been enjoying some of the functions and the features that we have in here. So let's dive in and take a look at some of the key things I've been playing with and what I've been learning. The first thing that I just had to explore was plugins on the master track. So yes, we can come down here to the master track, we can tap on there and we can add in plugins, which is pretty cool. So if we tap there, we can add an effect. What if we want audio unit here? We could add in something like the FAC Maxima, and there you go. We can run our FAC Maxima right here on the master track, which means we can do a quick mastering job here. So we wanted to just do a quick master preset with FAC. We can throw that on there. Let's just hit play and take a listen to what this sounds like. So yeah, a little bit overdone there. We would need to tweak the settings here, but again, you can turn it off and you can hear, turn it back on. Just having that on your master track is super cool. And of course, you can add limiters, you can add EQ, you can add effects, anything you like directly to your master bus instead of individual tracks. And that is something that I'm going to find myself using for a quick mastering look a bunch of times, I'm sure. But wait, there's more. Pete, I don't have FAC Maxima. What can I use that's built right in? Well, guess what? We've actually also got this one here, the Master Strip plugin. If we take a look at this one, you can see that we've got a built-in mastering strip here with a multiband compressor, a stereo imager, and a loudness maximizer, your brick wall limiter that you can throw here on your track. So that's really cool. Again, if you want to just have a quick listen before you do your full mastering at the end of your track, you can just throw this on your master bus here and take a listen and twiddle around with some mastering. And there's a bunch of presets in there as well that you can play around with to get your mix sounding good. So yeah, having a master strip plugin here in Cubasis, super cool. Now this next one I'm still getting my little head around, and that's send effects, because I've been using GarageBand so often and for so long that we only have insert effects. So you'd be familiar probably with insert effects. If you're not, an insert effect is an effect that we put directly onto a track, and each track has its own separate insert effects that we can add in there. But what if you want to, say, set up a reverb and send every single track to a reverb? Well, that's where send effects come in. And I've had to play around with this. What I've got here is Cleverb, which is Clevgran's reverb. I've added in here as an AU V3 effect, but in fact, let's just tap to add a different effect. Let's just add something. Say you just wanted to use one of the regular ones that are in here, the internal effects. And so we wanted to make a delay. We can set a delay here. We can play around with our timing and we can do whatever we want with that, get our delay all set up, lots of feedback on there. And then we can choose how much we want to send of each track with this slider here. So if we solo this upright bass and we come back to the start, let's just play this and we'll dial up this delay and you'll see what we can do here. So why is this cool? Well, for something like a delay, what if you just want to set up one delay and then have a little bit across every instrument? Well, now what you can do is select your different tracks and use that same send effect delay, but then dial in a little bit less, say, on your drums. So now if we bring that in, we bring our drums in with that bass. Let's take a listen. Get yourself a nice trippy vibe with some delay there using the send effect. So clearly I need to play around with these more, but it's something I was looking forward to experimenting with here in Cubasis 3 because I tend to use this. I use a master reverb and a master delay across all my tracks. This is just going to make that super simple with some of my workflow. So very keen to explore that some more. And you may have already heard it when I've been playing back the track, but of course I had to check out automation of not just volume. So I've played around with some panning automation on this banjo track. And yes, we do have a banjo and a ukulele. I know they're instruments a lot of folks are coveting in other DAWs. So if we pop out our mixer down the side here, or our options menu, I don't know the terminology yet, I'm getting there. And we tap on automation here. You can see I've got panning automation already enabled on this one. If we tap there, we can see that I've actually written in this panning automation. So this is pretty cool. If we play on this one, we'll take a listen to what this sounds like. In fact, we'll solo this one and take a listen to this banjo sound, and you'll hear it moving between the left and the right with this panning automation. Very cool, yeah. Let's just show this on a different track just so that you can see how you can actually write this in. And I don't know if this is the right way or the best way to use automation, but it's the way I've been using it so far. So we'll grab this drum track. We will open the editor here. We've got track 4 pan selected there. Now all I did here is just did a draw here, and we can just draw in some automation points just by doing that. Moving it up to there, down to there, up to there, down to there. So let's get a funky left to right automation going here on these drums. We'll just solo them, bring them in here and hit play. What did I do there wrong? Well, I did volume, but that's okay. That's how you do volume. If you wanted to move these around, that was the problem. I selected volume. I didn't select pan before I did that, but you can see the way that we can do this, and we can select any of these other things as well. So you can select your effects that you've got on your track, your sends, all sorts of things you can actually change there using your automation. So yeah, I've been finding this a lot of fun. I might get lost a bit in the weeds and start automating too many things, but for now I'm having some fun experimenting with this one. Now a quick bonus tip before we jump into recording. I've been finding that I'm using these X's and I've been cleaning up by just dropping everything away because I get a little overwhelmed with too many things on the screen at once. So that's a little tip if, like me, you like a clean workspace and you want to get everything back to this while you're doing your editing. So now why don't we move on to some recording things that I've learned. So I haven't done a heap of recording yet. Watch out for the next episode. We'll be grabbing the guitar, the bass, the microphone, and doing some real recording here. But what I've discovered so far just playing around is that this loop function here is super cool. So we can take this and put it in just a section. And then what I thought was the undo, but is actually the loop button, is going to set us to just that section. So if we want to record a section just to that part, it'll just loop it again and again, just that section. Let's make this 4 bars because what I'll show you is another cool thing with recording, which is the pads, which I'll show you now. So what I've got here is I've added in a couple of tracks with a jazz kit that I want to record some drums here. And I've got my loop set for those first 4 bars and I've got the loop on here. So now if I bring up my pads, there you go. And I'm actually really loving these pads. It just makes it so nice and easy to play in some drums. You can switch it between keys and pads, which I took a while to figure out yesterday, but I finally learnt my way around. So let's make sure our loop's on, make sure we're at the start of the track, and we'll record in, and it will record the 4 bars, and then you'll see it looped back. So we could record again and again if we wanted to, say, record a guitar part and do a bunch of takes. Let's hit record now. And there you go. You can see it will continue recording and looping back. So that's going to be a function I'm sure I will use a bunch. Now, what I can do, of course, if I want to make this go all the way through, we can use the learning that we had before, copy. You can see I'm still stumbling around a little bit just to get my head around where things are. But remember, it's only been one day. We will get there. So there you go. We've got our drums set out there. If we wanted to then mute our original funky groove here and just have our jazz drums playing here, we'll get rid of those pads so we can see everything. And then we come back and hit play on these. And of course, we can layer things up and start playing around with that. Want to not loop anymore, just turn our loop off there. So the loop record is one thing that I've been finding really cool. And those pads for recording things like drums, I'm finding really cool as well. Now, I haven't done a heap of recording, so that's it for recording here. But I will be plugging in a MIDI keyboard, guitar, bass, vocals, and recording some real instruments in an upcoming video. So if you're not already subscribed, now would be a good time to do that. And if you're in the future, those videos may already exist and be down in the description. But let's move on to our next section, which is file management. And I've only got one tip on this because I haven't played around a lot with it, but it's a very cool one. So our media browser here, it's probably not what it's called, but this is where all of our MIDI, all of our audio, our instruments, our projects are all stored. Anything file related is stored here. So here's my project, Pete is Noob, because I am. And what I have discovered here is I thought, well, how do we share? How do we back up? I'm always concerned about managing our files when starting with a new bit of software. So what we can do with this is actually pretty cool. So we can do all the same things. We can import, we can do new project, we can duplicate, but the share function that we have here, if we tap on that one, we can share it via email, or we can use the more function here and say save it to our files. But look what it does. it zips it up automatically for us, which is pretty cool. So now if I save to files, we'll just dump it ironically here into my GarageBand folder. We'll hit save. Yes, I've already got a version there. I'll replace it. So it saves it in there. Let's now jump over to the Files app and see how it saves it. So we'll come over, we'll jump into Files and go into on my iPad, my GarageBand location. There it is. So it's a zip file. If we want to open it, we just tap it. And if we want to open the folder, there you go. It's got any of the audio files that will be associated with that project will be there. And then, of course, the Cubasis file. So the project file is there and ready to go. So I find that super cool because it just does the grunt work for you. Now I know that I can just share this zip via email or via Dropbox or Google Drive, put it on my iCloud Drive, whatever I want to do, and I've got a backup of that in a really quick way. So good job, Cubasis, for making that a simple process, because that is one thing. Managing files is one thing that can trip folks up, especially here in iOS. So what am I still learning about Cubasis 3? Well, a whole bunch, to be very honest, but there's a few things here that I've just been trying to learn, and I thought I would throw them here because you may be able to help. If you have used Cubasis 3, drop some comments, let me know some resources I should look at, because I have started watching some videos, started reading the manual, watching tutorials, but I want to know your advice for what I should do next. But let's jump into a few things that I've been working on. So quantization is something that's pretty critical for MIDI tracks, and I have found that the quantize options here that we have in Cubasis are pretty cool for a couple of reasons. We not only have all of the different types of quantization we can do, triplet, dotted, and all of our different notes, but we have the amount of swing, and it's very customizable how much swing we want to throw in, and strength, which I find really cool. Now, I've had to get my head around it because basically you seem to set the settings there and then it won't actually quantize till you then hit the button. And see how that shifts things around there to that quantization? So then I'm assuming if we come back here, we want to go to an 8th quantization. Yeah, so I'm just sort of struggling to work out how we oh yeah, see, it's working, how we requantize. So I think I just need to play around with that because it seems to have a heap of options in there. I want to make sure that I know exactly how to use quantization, but there's definitely a lot of quantization options under the hood. Next up is playing any sort of arpeggios or automated sounds. So this may be because of my GarageBand upbringing, but when I jump into an instrument and we go to our keys here, we can obviously go ahead and play whatever instrument that we have there, no problem at all. And we can come to our pads to play some chords. That's all cool, but I'm kind of used to some other options here, an arpeggiator on there, and maybe some autoplay options like we have in GarageBand. Now that may be just asking too much, and maybe if I want that, I go back to GarageBand and I use that. But that was one thing I did notice here, is that you basically have to play in what you're using. Now, other instruments will have their own built-in things that can help you out, and maybe I just need to explore more because I've really just scratched the surface. Remember, 24 hours, but that's just one thing I wanted to point out here if you are a creator and use things like arpeggios a whole bunch. And the other thing that I haven't quite got my head around is my actual song structure and how to set up different sections, how to label sections and do all of that. I'm sure it's possible to do in here, but things like GarageBand, if I just want to loop things, I just tap this and then I loop it and it will go out for the rest of my section. I can define different section lengths and then move between those and move those around. So clearly we got a bunch of space here. I can keep playing around with this and I can do that, but it's something when I go to start recording entire songs that I'm definitely going to need to upskill myself on, because at the moment I'm kind of just building out an overall single sort of section. I want to be able to have a little more control over that. So again, if you've got tips on this, if you can help me out, then please drop those down in the comments. So what is the verdict after 24 hours with Cubasis 3? Well, you can probably tell by how excited I've been and how passionate I am that I'm pretty happy with some of the things here. There have been points of overwhelm, there have been frustrations which I've been working through, but on the whole, there's definitely a whole lot here that you can do. And again, my tip for my friends like me who get a bit overwhelmed with all of this going on is bring yourself back out, drop yourself back to that basic view if you need a little bit of a break from all of the options. So as I mentioned in my first video where I'd just taken a look, I think there'll be some folks who will want the simplicity of another platform, but if you are finding that there's things missing, I think Cubasis is going to be a good option. But we're going to find out because we've got more videos to come. As I mentioned, we're going to be plugging in our instruments, recording some live instruments, and having a whole lot more fun with Cubasis in the coming days. I hope you found this video useful, entertaining, or a bit of both. There's some more that you can check out down below, and I'll catch you on the next one.